you're saying genitals. There's a difference,
But
right?
remember, we all have genitals.
So do you think it comes down to sex? That's what decides who we are then?
Remember, it doesn't matter what someone has in their pants. It should be none of your fucking business.
So this is one of the biggest things that's happening right now. He's actually been convicted of over 60 offenses against kids. So we wanted to make that known that he's trying to stay in women's prison and he's actually harming women while he's there. He's taking off his pants and showing women in jails.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing outside of Calgary City Hall because ladies and a few males have gathered to protest about concerns about some of the most forgotten people in our society and what they are facing when it comes to males invading their spaces. That is incarcerated women. I'm going to tell you more about this cause as we talk to the protesters that came out to stand for safe sex-based spaces. Let's take a look. All right, this is Heather Mason, organizer of this event here in Calgary. For those who don't know a little bit about your story, let everybody know why you're so passionate about this cause.
All right, so I was actually sentenced to a 3-year sentence at Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario. While I was in, they actually changed the transfer policy and allowed males to request transfers into women's prisons. So I encountered a few males while I was incarcerated and also when I was out at the halfway house. And then they started transferring more in, and I had a lot of friends that were still inside that got victimized. And I became very passionate about the issue because I realized that there was no organizations or supports for those women. And I realized that I needed to stand up and speak for these women. And I've been doing these protests all across Canada for 3-4 years now. And it's just to raise awareness because, as my sign says, mainstream media doesn't report on this issue. So I find that a lot of the public doesn't understand what's going on.
Why was it important for you to be here today?
I have personal experience of being in jail with 2 males, one of whom cornered another young woman in her cell and then was removed, and I don't think she should have had to go through that. And I just want women to have the choice of female-only incarceration.
Well, because I have lived the experience of being at the remand in Edmonton and there was men there with full chests of hair in sports bras.
What was that like?
I mean, kind of laughable, but also very intense,
Well, I think it's important for men to be supportive. This, I think, effectively comes from a woman's voice, but showing that we have their backs and supporting, assisting, doing whatever we can to help spread the message.
Well, certainly, I think the more awareness we can raise around the issues that women are facing with the challenges that gender identity and expression present to our sex-based rights, I think that really helps to sort of create the momentum that we need to really start gaining the majority of people to want to come out and be present and not be intimidated by potential social consequences of name calling and ostracization from their social media platforms. So as many people, as many bodies on the ground, boots to the ground as they say, and just to create that space that more people feel more comfortable joining us next year, the year after, until we get rid of all of this, and women can enjoy their sex-based rights again without any interference.
The personal connection is that men are in women's sports, and I work with Heather Mason investigating paroles. So I come across all the paroles where men are in women's prison and they're harming women are getting and they're in women's First Nations healing lodges, which is really unfortunate. So there's pathological parole. These guys pretend they're First Nations women, they pretend they're women, and then they get special treatment. And they don't want them there because they're hurting women, so they try and get them out on parole as fast as possible. And there's one prisoner called Persad is his name, and he got out and he went into a mental ward where there was a young girl, and he got in there and kept visiting her. Thankfully, staff noticed, and he was rearrested and put back in jail. So these things are definitely allowing these guys to get off easy.
Tell people about why you're holding this sign.
Okay, the long and short of it is that People who have been violent towards women and children who are biological males have no place in spaces where women are vulnerable. These women are serving jail sentences. They're already doing their time. They shouldn't be in places where they're under even more threat of violence.
Hi. Can I ask you what your sign's about?
No, Rebel News, you're not real news. Not
Oh.
real news. Although you can read this if you want.
Sure. It says terrorist obsessions with others' genitalia is predatory, perverted, and creepy. So this protest is about males in women's prisons. Do you think that's a focus on genitalia?
Ultimately it is.
How so?
If you think about it, you're talking about gender, right?
You're saying genitals. There's a difference,
But
right?
remember, we all have genitals.
So do you think it comes down to sex? That's what decides who we are then?
Remember, it doesn't matter what someone has in their pants. It should be none of your business.
But you're saying it's a focus on genitalia. Do you agree with that? To talk about women who are maybe being raped, or males who raped babies that are in women's prisons with children there, like in programs like that?
It's a really difficult conversation to have. It's a meaningful conversation to have, but I don't think this is the way to have that conversation.
What would be a good way to have the conversation then?
Just finding people who are willing to speak and lead with love, and not create spaces where it creates media that really harms the trans community.
Oh, so let's back up. You said that this isn't the right way to have the conversation. So there's a protest happening. It looks pretty peaceful. Does it look peaceful to you?
No, not as a trans person. It really doesn't, and it really harms me, and I'm going to take this harm back home. And
Why carry it? What specifically about their signs or anything that is going to make you carry it home?
we do not know how to grieve as a community properly. We only know how to harm community, and this is really harmful.
Well, it appears Calgary's Antifa-like wannabes, or maybe they are Antifa, I'm not sure, has showed up to counter-protest. This protest advocating for safe spaces for women. And as typical, when you ask them questions about what their cause really is, they can't really get to any facts about it. It's just about feelings of harms. But I guess those feelings go ahead and justify people like Drea Humphrey not only being in a women's prison, but being in a women's prison that has a maternity program. That means there are small children there. Why is that a concern? Well, Drea Humphrey, who started identifying as Drea Humphrey after getting in trouble for this, is a baby and professed to also have drowned a toddler as well. So this is just some of the examples of what these ladies are standing up for. And that's some of the examples of the people who think that's A-okay. All right, Mahmoud, it seems like the counter-protesters know exactly who you are. They called you by name. Why do you think that
I'm
is?
so happy they figure who I am, but they cannot figure who they are. This is the funny part. So they can figure my name, but they cannot figure their sexual identity. What we're standing here for is very basic. I can't believe we have to come here to stand up to tell women should stay in a women's bathroom, jail, sport, and men should be in their own facilities. This is something ridiculous. Yes, they could call me by name because I have no intention or hate toward them. All I'm asking, we need to live in peace. What you do in your own bedroom is your own choice, but you don't have to push or press your ideology into our life, into our kids' life, or into our women, the most vulnerable part of our society's life. So this is what we need to pay attention to. And like I said earlier, I'm so happy for them to recognize me, but I wish one day they'll be able to recognize who they are.
And what stands out to you to be one of the biggest concerns when it comes to women in prison facing this issue?
Well, I mean, what's terrifying to think about is that with the male identifying, with the men, let's call it what it is, with the men who are transferring in, what really struck me and is terrifying is that they seem to be of maximum security level. So the women who are forced to exist with these men are literally dealing with the most terrifying men that there are in terms of their crimes, the level, degree of crime, and that is just too much to ask any woman to bear, in a space where she can't get away and has no voice.
Most of the women who have been incarcerated, including me, have experienced male violence. So it's quite disturbing to be forcibly confined with men and not allowed to name them as men, not allowed to express discontent about it. So it's an extra layer of trauma and silencing for already very vulnerable women who need to recover from their experiences.
These are women that are already vulnerable, some of the most vulnerable in our society. They often come from troubled backgrounds, and then we're putting them in with some of the most dangerous offenders. Women that are going a place where they've come from places where they're always under attack or feeling endangered. The last place that they should be feeling like that is a place where they need to be recovering and trying to put their best foot forward.
This is the most fundamental basic thing to believe in, as you believe the existence of male and female. And you cannot change this mentality, you cannot change this behavior. And sadly, some woke people, some upper power trying to confuse our future generation, and I believe these people are confused. That's why they don't know what they're doing.
Now, I couldn't help but notice your sign here. Tell us about it. It says serial pedophile sexually assaulting female inmates in Canadian prison, women's prison.
Yeah, Heather actually told me about this story, and it's on Redux. So this is one of the biggest things that's happening right now. He's actually been convicted of over 60 offenses against kids. So we wanted to make that known that he's trying to stay in women's prison, and he's actually harming women while he's there. He's taking off his pants and showing women in jails.
This person is in a place where they can take advantage of vulnerable women. I want everybody to look at their face, and I want them to look them up online and know that it is biological males who are fully intact that are in women's prisons. And although you might not have somebody in prison, you might know somebody who is unfortunate enough to be in that life circumstance, and we should speak up for them.
What do you make of people who they're kind of like, I don't know any women in prison. I don't think I'm going to know any women in prison. Why should I care?
So I had a girl who I played with roller derby with, and I explained this to her, and she's a First Nations girl, and I said, you know that the majority of women in jail are First Nations, even though they're a low percentage of our population. That's a huge overrepresentation of First Nation women. And she said, well, those women are dangerous, and they're probably worse than the men. And I said, no, those women are in there for minor offenses like drug offenses, like you had before you got cleaned up. And she just sort of really started to think about it for the first time. I don't know if she'll ever be changed, because you can convince a woman and then she'll forget because it's convenient.
Unfortunately, every cause can't be inclusive of everybody. At some point, we have to really narrow the specific goals that we're looking to achieve, because that's what we need. And it's unfair to be labeled as hateful when you need to have those specific boundaries and parameters for what you're asking for it to make sense.
Well, there you have it. Just more examples of why women and children need their own safe spaces. If you appreciate that Rebel News has been bringing the public the other side of the story, letting people know about important issues like this, consider being a part of what makes that possible. And a fun way to do so is to do some shopping at our Rebel News store, which has some merch like this, the Protect Female Athlete shirt you're seeing here. And when you buy stuff like that, you can use coupon code DREA10 while supporting the news that we bring you.